And my conversion was so dramatic, it was literally overnight. It was, I had a vision, the Lord gave me a vision in the midst of a dream. I was obviously sleeping, and it just was mind-blowing, absolutely miraculous.
Hi, welcome stream readers and everyone. Today I have a very special opportunity to talk to an old friend of mine and a really, really prominent and fascinating speaker, author, and public personality in the church in America and in American politics. My good friend, Eric Metaxas. He and I were at Yale together. We overlapped for about 2 or 3 years. We were actually in a seminar class at one point, though we didn't know each other at the time. If Eric wants to, he can tell you that story. We're here to talk especially about his new book, Fish Out of Water, which is a memoir of his youthful search for meaning in America, which, of course, because he attended Yale, was a little harder than it needed to be. Eric, welcome.
I can't believe I'm here. This is, first of all, thank you for that introduction. I'm very humbled to hear you say things like that about me. You know, I feel like I want to interview you, but I'll try to let you interview me.
America doesn't deserve for me to be interviewed. There were really lovely literary passages in here where you're meditating on the meaning of life. And as I started them, I thought, oh, this is not going to go well. He's getting profound, and that almost never works in these books. And you pulled it off. It was like a high wire act, and you did it. I'm very impressed. You spoke winningly about the late adolescent search for meaning of somebody in his 20s who just got out of college, and he's musing about the grand things and the big questions.
Yeah.
And almost always that sounds goofy to those of us in middle age.
Yeah.
And you managed not to do that.
I don't know
to actually
what
make
I
it
managed
resonate.
to do, but I'm thrilled you think I pulled
No,
it
no,
off. That's because I know you're tough, and I really I appreciate that.
So you talk about feeling like you're just living on the surface. And
well, let me just sum it up for people who
Yeah.
don't know what it's about.
Haven't read
It
the book.
starts at the beginning of my life. In fact, it starts before the beginning. I tell about my parents and my grandparents, whatever. And then I really tell the story of my life growing up in the Greek immigrant universe, even though my mother's an immigrant from Germany, but kind of growing up in the Queens. We have this in common.
we were
both grew up
born in the
Queens.
same hospital 2 years apart. Yes. Astoria General Hospital.
And I also remember nothing about that. I was pretty young compared to other people. Okay, so I talk about my life from then, growing up, moving to Danbury, Connecticut, which is like middle America, and then going to Yale and being a fish out of water in every instance, which a lot of people are, and you were in some ways as well, and not knowing as a working class European immigrant how to process the whole Yale thing, and do I fit in, and there's sort of these elites who have different views of the universe.
We would run into people whose names were on the buildings because their grandfather had donated it.
Evidently. And I get, there's no Zmirak chapel, and there's no, Metaxas dining hall. But so I tell that story, and then I tell about graduating and really being lost, and then ultimately finding Jesus, finding God, finding the meaning of life in a completely unexpected way, a miraculous way. So that's the arc of the whole thing. But as for what you're taking out of it, I'm more fascinated to listen to you.
All right, well then
I'm really amazed
let me unpack
by
it a little
this.
bit for the readers. You talk about living on this, feeling like you're on the surface of things and wondering if there's anything beneath it, if there is any great ground of being, and if so, what it is. You grew up in a Christian family. You were baptized. You were confirmed. You had First Holy Communion. You went to Greek.
Orthodox don't do First Holy Communion. We take communion when we're like 6 months old.
Right. Okay, but you were receiving the sacraments. You were educated in a Christian school, and yet Well, that's what I want to get to. What was it about that legacy Christianity that didn't seep? It didn't seep into the core. It wasn't there to protect you against the secular pressures you later encountered at Yale and in the literary world. Why? What failed about it?
Well, I think most people who grow up in what I would call ethnic Christianity, right? Your parents come over from Poland, you go to the Catholic Church, a lot of Polish people there. you're Italian, you go to the Catholic Church. We were Greek. We went to the Greek Orthodox Church. And it is as much or more about being Greek than it is about Orthodox Christianity. It's kind of like this is where the Greeks hang out. And so it's kind of assumed, and I write about, in my Bonhoeffer book, I write about how Christianity is assumed among the Lutheran Germans, and when something's assumed, it makes an arse of many people. And basically...
That's an old Odd Couple joke.
Yeah. And so basically, if everybody's a Christian, nobody's a Christian. In other words, it means that, hey, we're all Germans, we're all Lutherans, we're all Christians, we're not Jews, we're not atheists, so we're Christians. No, you're not. You're a Gentile, you're a German. In the Greek environment, it was never, having come into the world of born-again evangelical Christianity, you realize, hey, this is like a serious thing. We need to understand we're supposed to have a relationship with the Lord. We're supposed to talk to Jesus. We're supposed to know what the Bible says. We're supposed to pray when things get tough. We're supposed to, there's a way of being when you really believe. And in many churches, and especially in a lot of cultural Christianity, people just, you go to church, you do the stuff, and you go home. And it doesn't really, you're not really deeply faithful. I think what happened to me, which happens to a lot of people, when I had this profound, miraculous conversion. At the end of the book, the term fish out of water becomes clear, why the book is titled Fish Out of Water. And my conversion was so dramatic, it was literally overnight. It was, I had a vision. The Lord gave me a vision in the midst of a dream. I was obviously sleeping, and it just was mind-blowing, absolutely miraculous. And so I was so profoundly converted that I looked back and thought, what the heck were we doing in church all those years and decades? I'd been an altar boy, and I learned nothing about the Bible, and I learned nothing about what it is. And I really do think that that's, heartbreaking. They don't have Bible studies, and they don't have, they think, well, that's what the born-agains do. We just, eat baklava, and we're baptized. What else are we supposed to do?
Well, I would suggest that all that time in a Christian atmosphere with Christian iconography and Christian readings and the sacraments, which I believe work, may have planted seeds.
I would not argue with that at all. I would not argue with that at all. Listen, I memorized the Nicene Creed in Greek when I was 7, and or was I 8? I don't remember. I think I was 7. No, I had to be 7. And it cuts both ways, because I thought, how preposterous. I'm memorizing this. This is like to show off, that I'm the smart kid and I can memorize, to pistevo. And yet,
it sticks in your head.
Something happens, and it's inside you, and now when I say it, it has meaning. And I think a lot of that stuff is true, and I didn't see it at the time, and I also didn't see it.
You and I had to memorize the first 20 lines
Juan de April with the Sarasota, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Of the Canterbury Tales in Middle English. It's it's a freshman ritual at Yale. And it seemed silly at the time, but even though there's not a lot of theology in that part of the Canterbury Tales. There is in the rest. There's a profound Christian message
Memorizing
in the
poetry is fantastic.
Yeah, but things you learn and memorize as a kid have a particular powerful resonance for you later on. I'll give you an example.
I'm all for it. You're right.
We had to learn a prayer when I was a kid. And I remember part of it was a prayer to the Virgin Mary, and part of it was we called her Mother of the Word Incarnate. Okay? And as a 7-year-old, I thought, oh, so she coined the word incarnate. What's the big deal about that?
That's funny.
And later on...
That's funny. She coined the word incarnate, yeah.
All right, I'll coin a word. She did a neologism, big deal.
Yeah.
And then later, as it resonated with me, but you know what? I can't hear that prayer without tears coming to my eyes.
In the book, I try to express my sincere love for the Greek community.
Yeah.
In other words, I try not to be hard on them, because I'm aware of things that I wasn't aware of, when this first happened to me. And for me, I guess a lot of it is just about the joy and the fun of some of these crazy stories. I've been remembering these stories my whole life.
Yeah.
And, the Greek teacher that is like slapping everyone and spitting and smoking in the
doesn't bathe in
classroom.
the whole time you've worked with him.
And I just thought to myself, like, these stories are just funny. And to me, that's enough.
And you
I
live
wanna
through
tell
them, you
stories.
have the right to use them.
Yes.
You had
And-
to smell that teacher all
Oh,
that time.
man.
At the very least, you should be able to write about it now. Did you use the real names?
Not in every case.
I'm glad of that in certain cases.
There are certain
I was very
cases
relieved.
where I had. Oh no, I couldn't use the certain names.
Yeah.
The kind of the Me Too stuff with the politician in Danbury, I changed the names.
All right, let's talk about that a little bit.
And
That was
abortion,
very,
I changed the names.
that was
and-
very interesting.
Yeah.
You in high school were being groomed by a sex abuser. You were
You know,
underage.
I guess. No, I was 16.
That's underage. You were jailbait. My
Actually,
friend.
wait. No, I turned 17.
Still
like
jailbait.
right when. Okay, and I was. This is the 70s, right? So it's another
So,
universe.
yeah.
And
That's when a lot of the sex abuse happened.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
wasn't just clergy.
And so the young mayor of the town, when I graduated, I was the valedictory speaker, even though I wasn't technically valedictorian, but the same thing at Yale, like whoever gives the best speech is chosen, so I gave the best speech, and I was chosen, I spoke, and so he hired me as his intern. And it really was a wonderful experience, and in many ways, he really was a genuinely wonderful person to work for. I mean, the whole thing was amazing, but behind it all was this idea, this kind of pansexual motive that, I guess he was bisexual at the time and eventually married and had 4 sons who are now grown and became a rather different person. And so I tried not to write about this in a way that was vindictive or anything like that, because he's actually passed away. And I always felt very kindly toward him because nothing happened, and I was never
He
feeling...
just kind of put the line in the water, and you didn't.
Right.
You didn't take the hook.
Right. And, but obviously other people did.
Yeah.
And so, but at the time, and what I think I talk about in there is that we were brainwashed not to judge.
Right.
We were brainwashed like, hey, who's to say what, like we're not, and I drank that Kool-Aid.
This is the time when rock stars were sleeping with their 14-year-old groupies,
Right.
and nobody was doing anything
Right,
about it.
right. And Roman Polanski and
70s were a
and look,
terrible
Jean-Paul Sartre. I just wrote about this in my new book, which is coming out in October. It's called "Is Atheism Dead?" Jean-Paul Sartre and the whole gang of wackos, Derrida and company, signed something in 1977 in France to have young people having sexuality decriminalized, or that it would be fine for someone to
For
sleep with a
older
13-year-old.
older people.
Yeah, to sleep with a
Yeah.
14-year-old or something like that. They signed a letter. This was the big movement
They
toward,
presented
toward freedom.
They presented as getting rid of age discrimination. 7-year-olds are subject to age discrimination if they can't consent to sleep with the street corner Santa. That's how they present it.
Wow.
It's dark stuff.
Did you know that Sartre almost certainly was received into the church on his deathbed?
I certainly hope that's true.
Yeah.
Because,
I write about it. I give the details
good,
in my next
good,
book.
Good.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. When I discovered it, I thought, how come I've never heard this? This is amazing.
Well, he's someone, I remember at Yale reading Being and Nothingness and seeing his only argument against the existence of God was that if there were a God, it would be intolerable not to be God. That it's just too much of an offense to our sense of pride.
But can
for
I
there
tell
to be
you,
someone out there
but think
with
about
that power
this.
who's not
He's
us?
exactly right. If you really, this is what I like about Sartre and Camus, to the extent that I'm aware of what they've done, because I'm not that aware. But the idea is that he gets it exactly right. That's the human response to God. I hate you. I want to be you. I want to kill you. That's how you know you're a sinner who deserves hell forever, because that is the logical extension
Of
of our
sin.
normal original sin nature. Without Jesus dying on the cross for us, without that infinite sacrifice, that is who we are, and that's where we're headed. I mean, that's putting it really starkly, but what you just said, it kind of sums it up. And what I like about Sartre and Camus in a way is that they had the guts to follow things through logically, and because of that, and again, I say this in my next book, because of that, both of them eventually were led to God. People don't know that about Camus either, but there's a book
He
written
was
by...
on the verge of converting when he died in that accident.
Absolutely.
And let's hope he
most
did in
people
his
don't
heart.
know that. But see, as somebody like me, I think I don't know what we mean when he was on the verge of convert. I mean, I think if you want to convert or you're ready to do it, being a biographer of Luther, I believe that it's done. It doesn't need to be officially done in that room by the priest.
We call it baptism of desire. We have a term for it too.
Well, but that term has been developed since the Reformation.
Yeah.
Obviously. But the point is that it's fascinating to me that because both of them could coldly see the horror of a world without God. Everybody else is like, well, we don't think God exists, but who cares? And they were like, no. This is bleak. This is harsh. How do we have a morality? How do we, they were actually troubling themselves to figure this out. And in the end, they realized you can't.
So where we are today in the culture is trying to find pretty boxes and red ribbons to put on the big box of nihilism.
Right.
At the black hole at the center of secular life. Darwinian materialism.
Right.
The idea that we are all just the accidental random results of ruthless biological competition, and therefore racism is wrong.
Right, and the funny thing is, therefore, nothing's wrong.
You should be kind to the disabled, and you can't make fun of transsexuals because ruthless competition for biological reproduction is the only important thing. That's why we have to welcome gays.
Right.
That's why we have to let men.
Right. Well, people, you're so sarcastic that you've lost 49% of the audience. People don't realize that what you're saying, of course, is that it doesn't follow logically. It's madness. And no joke, this is what I write about in my next book, which we're not talking about. That book's called Is Atheism Dead? That'll be out in October.
Is it available for pre-order yet?
No.
Well, get on it.
Yeah, no, I'm editing it.
If you're going to start talking about the book, it better
No, you're
be
the one who's
available
talking
for
about it. Now, they tell us we have 2 minutes left to talk about fish out of water. Humana, humana, humana.
All right, so I don't want any more, I don't want to do spoilers, but there is a golden fish in the book that comes to you in a dream through a hole in the ice, a hole in the surface of things. You want to talk a little bit about that?
No, but I might. The thing is that, I'll just say this. Part of the reason I felt I had to tell the whole story of my life, other than the fact that I do think it is interesting and strange and funny, but the really basic reason was that I had to lay the foundation for the dream that happens around my 25th birthday, because the dream is God's insanely beautiful, brilliantly imaginative weaving together of three, at least, fundamental elements of who I was in a way that I don't think anyone else could have ever done. It's like when God proved to me that I was His creation. It's kind of like a fictional creation. You weave things at the end together. This was just so astounding, and it happened in a dream. And God revealed Himself to me on a number of levels in the dream. And the punchline kind of is that the Greek word for fish is ichthys, the ancient Greek word, and psadi is the modern. It doesn't work, but ichthys. It's an acronym for Jesus Christ, the Son of God, our Savior. So all the early Christians use the symbol of the fish, knowing that it's the acronym for Jesus Christ, the Son of God, our Savior.
And we see it in parking lots. And
well, you see it, but people don't know what it is. People think it's like, oh, Jesus was a fisher of men, or they don't. Most people I've learned don't really know the whole thing. And in the dream, God uses the image of a golden fish, and it just completely blows my mind. I mean, I still today, the more I think about it, the less I can comprehend that it really happened. It was just so miraculous. I mean, my life was literally changed overnight. The next day I knew Jesus is real, I've accepted Him, and there's no going back. I went to sleep single, I woke up married, and that's that.
Wow. Everybody needs to get hold of Fish Out of Water and read it and plumb these depths, and maybe you'll catch a golden fish too.